Hello everybody and welcome back to another guide. So in this guide we are going to be going over Simbrief. What is Simbrief, how to get Simbrief and how to do the basics on Simbrief. So first of all you will need Navigraph. You will need to download Navigraph. I will post a link in the description for that as well. Follow instructions and you don't have to pay for it, but if you want the charts and stuff as well, you will eventually have to pay for it. It's moderately priced. I think it's about £17 a month. I think the last time I checked when I signed up a few months ago. Obviously due to inflation and all that's going on in the world, could be more, could be less. So you make sure you download Navigraph because you will need your Navigraph details to log into Simbrief. I'm already logged into Simbrief at the moment. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, Simbrief is basically a flight planning tool which you can use for Microsoft Flight Simulator, whether or not you're on vatsim or not. So, it's more so for vatsim users more than just your normal flight sim users, but it can also help as well. So, what do we do and where do we start? So first, obviously, once you've got it all set up and you've got your login details and you log in for the first time, you'll be met with this page. I tend to just ignore all this. I've not really read any of this. But what I normally do is when I come onto Simbrief, I'll go to dispatch system. And yeah, you've got create new flight, load save flight, edit your last flight, and view last flight. It's pretty much got all the ones here as well. I don't really bother the database, the user guide, or my fleet, or my briefing. So we're just going to go straight ahead and create a new flight. Now, it comes up with this page. So you've got generate flight, new flight, save flight, and then close flight if you don't want to do it. You've got all this on the right hand side. I tend not to mess around with that. I think that's more advanced if you want to go into more detail, but this is just a basic guide now to do it. So I'm just going to leave that section alone and we're going to concentrate on this section right here. So flight info, you've got your airline, your flight number, your departure, your arrival, and your alternate should you choose to have an alternate. The date, which is obviously the 28th of August, and departing time, obviously you can change the different departure times depending on when you want to fly out. So for instance, I could go for 5:15 and that will show up on the vatsim and it'll show up for the controllers at what time you're due to depart, so it gives them time to plan. If it's a busy airport, they can look at it and go, right, he's coming out at this time, we've got enough time, so we don't need to worry about him, we can prioritise him later. So for the airline, this just for instance, I want to fly as KLM. So I'll put in KLM because that's the airline code, and I'll just put, you can put any random numbers, or if you want to be more realistic, you can put in the actual real life airplane, what route it's going to and all that stuff. Departure, let's say we're going from Newcastle to Dusseldorf, which is Echo Delta Delta Hotel, and Newcastle is Echo Golf November Tango. And let's give us an alternative ADDV. You can choose not to have an alternate. I tend to have one just in case something goes wrong with the plane I'm flying. And let's say we'll go for the A320neo. So once all this is filled in, once you're happy with the dates, times, flight number and all that stuff, and what aircraft, obviously you can choose different aircraft. I've got a load of, obviously not all of them will be on Microsoft Flight Simulator, but I think the most of them are. Obviously the other ones will be payware. So obviously I'm going for A320neo. You can use open aircraft editor and you can add new airframes, view fleets and all that good stuff. If you want to add them in. But we're just going to leave that for now. So, and then below that you've got the advanced aircraft options. I tend to just leave these top bits out. And the registration, the VIN number, cell code, and put any random letters in, as long as it's 4 random letters. And then you've got your call sign now, obviously for me being KLM, it's going to be KLM 9184, so that's the call sign, what you'll use to call up ATC on vatsim, and it's what they will use to call you. So always remember to keep an ear out when your call sign is being called. And then we've got the optional entries. So you've got the scheduled flight time, which is 1 hour 40 minutes. You've got a departure runway, which is 07. Arrival runway is 33. Normally Newcastle it's 25 for departures. So it'll come up with new SIDs and stars. You got your taxi out, your taxi in. I'll just leave that as it is. Extra fuel, I'll just leave that there. And then you've got your altitude. You can set it to auto and then you can just leave it if you're on vatsim for ATC to just give you clearance to a set altitude. Or you can put in, say, what? Put in 12,000, 15,000, any altitude you want really, depending on what your route is telling you to go to. Then you've got your current AirAC cycle. These update every month. So as you can see, 11th of August, this is valid from the 11th of August to the 7th September. And obviously if I was to go back to March to April, obviously it would say outdated. So go back, make sure you've got this select. Normally it just automatically defaults it to the correct AirAC. And then below that you have your route selection, and obviously it gives you quite a lot of few different routes from different websites. You've got FlightAware, SkyVector, Route Finder, Global Route Database, don't know what that one is, Auto Router, and then you've also got IFPS validation. So I tend to kind of write these down. I tend to write down the departure, the standard instrument departure, and the stars, which is the arrivals. I tend to write these down, so then obviously when you're getting the call through an ATC, it's a lot easier to read back. However, if you're not happy with that route and you want something a bit more complicated or a lot more simple, you can always go into view more routes. And it's got all these other routes here which are valid for the AirAC. Obviously these routes which are highlighted in red, you cannot use them because they are not valid for the AirAC that you've currently selected. Then it'll tell you your route is valid for AirAC 2208 and your route distance is 498 miles plus 19.3%. I don't use the route finder. Obviously you can generate your own route if you wish to. The weather I don't really dabble on about with that, and alternate airports I don't really. You can have more than one alternate airport. You can have up to 4. So say if I want to pick 2, obviously I could pick Manchester as a route and give you the right route to Manchester, and then I could have Heathrow in as a alternate. You can have up to 4. Normally I just stick with 1. And then you can analyze the route, and then obviously it's telling me that's an extra 145 nautical miles if I have to divert, or for some reason I can't get access to the airport I'm arriving at. Then you've got your takeoff alternate, and then your en route alternate. I don't really bother with them as well. So down below you have a nice little map, and it shows you the route that you'll be taking. And obviously it's got all the waypoints. All these of course will be in your FMC once you load into Microsoft Flight Simulator, which I will be showing you in a second. And then it's also got your route to your alternate, which is, I think that's Bremen, Hanover, might be, I'm not too sure what that airport is. And so that is it for the dispatch options page. Once you're happy, you can then go to generate flight, let it load for a second, and then it should generate your final flight. Obviously, if you realise, like if you forgot what runway you're landing, taking off and landing, you can always go back to edit flight, then regenerate it, just to make sure. You can print it and view a PDF of it. You can download the FMS, and then you can also pre-file a flight if you're flying on vatsim. Obviously, as I say, you don't have to do on vatsim if you're not on vatsim. And also, in the remarks, hang on, I'll go back. if you're brand new to vatsim, make sure you put in the remarks new to vatsim and put it in capital letters so it's easier to see, and then it will show up once it's loaded on there. So it tells the ATC controllers that you're new to vatsim, so they can give you a bit of leeway if they need to, and they'll know that you'll not be as quick as most competent pilots on the vatsim network. Here you have your OFP. It's got your cost index, your ground distance, air distance, fuel bias, your maximum takeoff weight, estimated takeoff weight, your zero fuel weight, and your estimated zero fuel weight, your flight steps for your alternate, and then dispatch remarks new to vatsim. So it's all got it in there. It's all got your planned fuel. It's done all the calculations. I tend to just skip over this because I'm lazy. But if you want to find out important information like what runways are in use, if there's any obstructions, places you can't fly to, what heights you need to be at, and all that good stuff. So you can spend your time reading that if you want to really get into detail, but if you just want to get up and go after you've put this flight plan in, then you can just get up and go. So then you've got the weather note arms for the departure, so you can click on that, so it tells you the weather. Normally if you're on vatsim you might be looking up for them to have an ATIS, just depends on what coverage it's got. So for instance at Newcastle or departure takeoff, it's got the winds at 060 at 5 knots. And then it's got few clouds at 015, which is flight level 1500, and the QNH is 1023. So once you've scanned all that information and you're 100% happy with the flight plan, to download it, simply go to FS 2020, find FS 2020 and hit the download. Now, depending on what kind of planes you're flying, there's a difference to where you have to download. For instance, if you're flying the PMDG 737 or the PMG line of planes, either 700, the 600, the 800, which is recently released, you would go to these ones, PMG Flight Plan and PMDG Wind Uplink, but that'll be a video for another time. So, we'll get Flight Sim loaded. Right, so here we are, Microsoft Flight Simulator. So, we've just downloaded the flight plan from Simbrief. So what you want to do next is go into the world map. Obviously choose the plane, which will be the Airbus A320neo. And then at the bottom here, you will hit the space bar. Press space again to load from your PC, and it should appear in your downloads. Here it is. So Adrian T. Okay, no, that's the wrong one. But the principle is still the same, so it would normally come up with the flight plan, AG, and AG, NT stuff. This time it's just AGLL, I've just cocked it up. But the principle is still the same. Obviously, it's got the departures, the arrivals, and the approaching runway. Spawning the runway is just fine if you're not on vatsim, but if you're on vatsim, you are not allowed to spawn on the runway. That is a big no-no. So I'm just going to choose gate 9. Obviously, it's going to, for some reason, it defaults to a direct. So I'm going to go for the girly 1Y departure. And then I'm going to go ILS 09 left. The cruise altitude is 2500, and we'll jump in, and it should load the route up onto the FMC. So we'll just wait for this to load up. I chose the default A320 Neo because I know that's what most people usually go along with. Not everyone's got all the Payware aircraft. Obviously, I probably will do separate videos on what to do with the different aircraft, but for the default aircraft, this is pretty much the main way of loading in. It'll be the same for the 787-10 Dreamliner if you've got the Premium Deluxe Edition, the default A320 Neo, the default 747. I don't know if it works on the general aviation aircraft, i.e. the Cessna. I think it does. I do not know. I'll probably do a separate video on that as well. So here we are in the Airbus A320neo. We've just had our flight plan in from Simbrief. And now we are going to see if our flight plan is loaded up. Obviously this is the wrong flight plan from what I did on Simbrief, but the principles still apply. So I'm just going to do a quick start, so Control E. Because obviously I'm not on the vatsim network. So you'd go down, get a better view. So you go down your FMC and go into your flight plan, and there you have it. The flight plan is already loaded in. It's got all the waypoints in. I'll get rid of this direction. So the flight plan's already in. So you got all your waypoints there, and it's also showing up on the primary flight displays. And then obviously if you want to put in your performance here, so it's got your V1 speeds, your VR rotate speeds, your transition altitude, flexor temp, flaps I'd put in 1. But that is pretty much it. That is how you get your Simbrief flight plan regarding where you're going to and from onto the default A320neo. As I say, this applies for all the default Asobo aircraft, so the 747, the 787-10. I don't know about the general aviation aircraft, but I'd probably have to do some research on that and come out with another video, but that is how you would do it. So once again, thank you for tuning in and watching this video, and if you like what you see, please don't forget to give a like and subscribe to try and get that 1,000 subscriber mark. We're getting there slowly, and I appreciate everyone who's so far joined me on this journey, and I hope you're enjoying the rest of the guides. So once again, leave a like, share, comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.